Tonight, we are going to discuss the ultimate guide to mastering your money. Welcome to your financial journey. If you are a successful money manager or money maker, my goal tonight is to help turn you into a savvy money manager. Here's what's on the agenda tonight. We are going to work on what it takes to build your financial house, kind of go over how to understand the stock market and investing. That seems like it's a little overwhelming sometimes. And we want to help you with retirement planning. There's a lot of questions that revolve what to do with an employer plan. My favorite part is going over the golden rules of investing. And finally, how we conquer life's unexpected twists and turns, how you can become a finance whiz, closing it out with my top money tips. And also, we are going to share how you can create a winning game plan for you and your family. The first, most essential component to diving into your financial plan is to build your financial house, build the foundation. If we don't have a strong foundation, cracks can happen, and unfortunately, your house could crumble. The first area we look at is cash flow, seeing if that's positive, even, or negative. Then we look at determining your emergency fund, what's in there, and is that adequate for you and your family should an emergency happen? And third, we need to make sure we cover risk. We all know unexpected things can happen, and an unexpected catastrophe or life event could wipe us and our families out financially. So we need to make sure we're addressing risk. All right, cash flow. What does this mean? This basically means tracking your income and expenses. The goal here is to make sure that your expenses are less than what you're making every month. So to figure this out, we want to start with a budget. Regardless of what you're making, what income is coming in, we need to have a budget to track what's coming in and what's going out. When budgeting, one of my favorite hacks that I can advise you is to pay yourself first. This will help you build good saving habits. So your savings will be automated and you won't even think about it, and you'll be saving like no time, like a pro. And then you want to focus on your necessities. I like to call it your hug money, your housing, utilities, gas, and groceries. We need to make sure we pay ourselves first and have the hug money listed in our budget. And then also go ahead and put your entertainment, your vacations, a travel budget in place, because sometimes we see that lifestyle creep happens and those discretionary or fun expenses put us in the cash flow negative section, which we don't want to see. We want you to be cash flow positive or cash flow even if need be. Mentioned it just now, we want to automate. Want to automate our expenses, our bills, whatever we can automate. It's such a good habit, so you don't have to think. It's just done for you. It builds good habits. So automating paying yourself first and automating paying your bills. I like to say that we are our most important bill, so that's just another sentiment on how much paying yourself first is so important. And it's so important too to adjust the budget. I totally get it. If your income fluctuates or your expenses fluctuate, that is completely okay. And it doesn't cause you to not need a budget. So if we have some fluctuation in income or expenses, make sure we're staying on top of it. And if the numbers aren't adding up or we can't get even or positive with our cash flow, let's look for ways to increase our income or reduce our expenses. And some ways to increase income could be side hustles such as DoorDash or Uber Eats or Ubering, doing some freelance work. So if you have a hobby, find a way to monetize that and sell that good or service. Or search for a way where you can up your professional career and find more opportunities that may have more income for you. And then reducing expenses is also possible. So it's really going through to see what you find value in, what you're not utilizing. Maybe it's wise to cut it out and see where we can save every month, even if it's a temporary thing. If we are cash flow negative, we really want to work on reducing our expenses when possible. The emergency fund. Aside from having a cash flow analysis, analyzing what's in that emergency fund is so important. The biggest question is, how much should I have in there? There's actually a sweet spot I say it's between 3 and 6 months worth of expenses. If you want to be extra cautious and extra conservative, 12 months worth of expenses max is what I would want you to have in your bank account. And to determine, what that variance is for you really comes down to your level of comfortability and also where income's at. If you have an income that's fluctuating, you may want to have 4, 5, 6 months worth of expenses. If you have a pretty stable income or pretty low expenses and things are pretty stable, having 3 months worth of expenses is a pretty good cushion. Again, I think around 6 months would be a sweet spot, 12 months if you're ultra conservative and you really want to make sure you have a solid emergency fund. 12 months worth of expenses max is what I would suggest. At that point, you're really just losing money due to inflation if we have more than 12 months worth of expenses in the bank. Emergency fund tips. If you don't have an emergency fund, here are the best tips that I can share with you on how to build one. First, automate your savings. Maybe set up a separate bank account that you don't see every day, and make sure that out of each paycheck, just a little bit is going into that separate bank account that you'll be able to access if you need for an emergency, but maybe one that you don't see every day. And also look for ways to cut expenses. We just talked about it on the last slide. If you need to reduce expenses to build an emergency fund, that should really be prioritized. And if 3 months worth of expenses sounds like a really big task for you, start small, start with a small goal, and then elevate that goal to a new emergency fund goal. It's always fun to celebrate with people when they've reached that goal. I get excited because any win is big, but taking a win and your first steps of your financial journey are pretty exciting. Risk management. This is where we talk about insurance. It's not the most pleasant conversation to talk about, but the reality is we have insurance on our homes, our cars, our jewelry, our phones, our computers. So why not insure our most important asset, which is our lives? My cousin 2 weeks ago was in a car accident. She's in her early 20s, super healthy. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was just a passenger in the car and she got T-boned. A car ran a red light and now her life is drastically different. And at your early 20s, we don't expect for that to happen, but I think we've all been able to witness a friend or family member or someone we know kind of go through that experience where we realize, hey, that could happen to me, that could happen to you. So it's just so important to get life insurance while we're healthy or while we're younger. It really provides a safety net for you, and not only you, but your loved ones and your family. And if you don't have a family right now, but that's something that you want down the line, talking about life insurance now and getting a life insurance policy on you makes all the sense in the world because the younger we are, the healthier we are, the cheaper it is to buy life insurance. How it works are death benefits get paid out should something happen to you, or in my cousin's case, she has maybe a critical or chronic illness. Thank goodness she doesn't have a terminal illness, but sometimes if you have any of those three illnesses, you could actually access your life insurance proceeds while you're still living. It's not only a benefit for you should something happen and you pass away. So nobody really wants it until they need it. Thinking about my cousin and her situation, she's going to want it now because we had this big shakeup in our family. But is she going to be able to qualify and get it because of all of the medical problems she has right now? Probably not. Life insurance can also be used as an investment tool. Whole life insurance provides a death benefit and also can provide you a little bank account, which can also serve as an emergency account. I myself have both term and whole life insurance. Um, Whole life insurance is great because it does build cash value, which acts like a separate bank account, and it could be used to fund a down payment on a house, a car, fund a wedding, or fund a business. Disneyland was created with life insurance proceeds, or life insurance cash value dollars from Walt Disney. Ray Kroc used life insurance cash value proceeds to fund the expansion of McDonald's. And J.C. Penney is another company that kind of originated with cash value from life insurance. So it's something that the wealthiest families in America have, and it's something that is kind of talked about pretty quietly. So that's why at Resource One Advisors, we do want to highlight risk management on how we can leverage it for the event of something happening to us, but also how we can leverage our dollar wisely and create a separate bank account in a way for ourselves to dip in and out of. All right, now we're going to talk about investing and the stock market. Ben Franklin said, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. Wise man he was. We see him on the $100 bills. Here is a brief historical chart of the S&P 500. The S&P 500 tracks the 500 large US companies, and it provides insight into the economy, the stock market health, and it's just a common benchmark of what the market does. So currently, it's dominated by major players like NVIDIA, Apple, Microsoft, Meta, Google, and Amazon. And I'm sure you've heard wild news about the market, how it's been on kind of a tear with the recent election. It seems like most of the news happening is surrounded by the stock market. And if you have investment accounts, you would hope that these accounts have been up pretty high. Just this year alone, we're up immensely. So if you haven't been invested in the market, you have missed out on some gains. All right. Again, mention what the S&P 500 is. This is kind of a breakdown of the top players in the game. Historically, the S&P has averaged a 10% annual return with dividends. It's pretty great. We have some years where we're up 20%. We have some years where we're down 20%. More often than not, we are up. And there's silver lining in everything. When the market is down, that makes a really good opportunity to buy. Think about it as being Black Friday, where we're just eager to buy whatever we can because it's super cheap. Here is the power of what dividends and compound interest does. If you're investing, it's so important to know what dividends are, which they're basically thank you notes that a company pays you back with a little extra profits they give for you being a loyal shareholder. Those get reinvested, and then that hopefully will compound into more growth. Albert Einstein said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. And there is one thing, my friends, that money cannot buy, and that is time. And if we look back here, we see the power of compound interest take off. The gray line shows no dividends being paid out. The blue area shows the dividends being paid out and letting compound interest do its thing and the true magic of what that does. You don't have to be rich to invest, and that's one of the most common misconceptions I hear people talking about. They come up with a reason why they can't invest. My wealthiest families that I worked with started out the poorest. They tell me stories on how they had to share clothes and even bath water with their siblings because their families just didn't have the means to really provide a normal lifestyle or middle class lifestyle for them. If they had the means to save a little each month, you do too. Here's just an illustration of what investing $250 per month looks like for the next 30 years with an annual return of 10%. So essentially similar to investing in the S&P 500. The green shows what we invested, and the orange shows what the account balance does. So if we would have put that 250,000 or $250 away at the bank, we really wouldn't see that money grow. Where if we were to invest it, we would have over $500,000. We would have only put 90,000 in. If I could ask you, would you rather have 90,000 or $500,000? I think we know the answer. This transforms into a substantial amount, and just take a look at that yellow bar and see that that is your money working for you. The green bar is the money that you have worked for and you worked hard for. And then that yellow is letting your money really work for itself because you invested. We've heard a lot of news in the past few years about what the market's done. Think back to 2020. People were faced with a pandemic. The market was down. The market had experienced some volatility, and then it also picked up. So if you think taking a big loss is painful, if you let the panic and the fear of a down market get in your way, you're actually missing out on really big gains. The market has historically risen far more than it's fallen. And out of all of the down years that we've had, those negative years, how many of them have been permanent? And the answer is zero. Short-term waves happen, but it's so important that long-term trends have provided positive results and have rewarded patient investors. So it's really interesting to see too the correlation between the negative years that we've had. If we look into the next year, historically, the year following a bad year has been pretty positive. So don't get discouraged when we do see the market down. We need to change our mindset and think of it as an opportunity to buy. We all wish we could go back in the past and make different investing decisions. Looking back, one of my biggest regrets is why didn't I invest more during the pandemic when the markets were low? Because the market ended up turning out pretty nice that year. Here are my 6 golden rules of investing. If you follow these 6 golden rules, you are going to set yourself up for some bright potential in your future. The first rule is to buy low and sell high. Invest when the market's down instead of being fearful of the market being down. See it as an opportunity to get in and go buy on sale. Think about how many people line up on Black Friday to get deals at stores. This should be you when the market's down. The second golden rule of investing is to diversify your portfolio. Do not put all of your eggs in one basket. Unfortunately, we have seen so many clients, maybe they worked for a company, maybe they worked for a company like Boeing for so many years and they accumulated a lot of Boeing stock. Boeing is a great company. Good companies experience bad things. There was some bad press that has happened with Boeing in the last few years, and that stock has drastically declined and it might not recover for some families. So don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Diversify. So if one particular holding doesn't really take off or if it experiences some bad news, your whole portfolio isn't down and maybe just a portion of that holding is down where you have other holdings that hopefully take off and give you some growth. The third rule of investing that I like to share is that we need to think about time in the market rather than timing the market. We need to invest consistently, and that ties into the fourth rule of investing, which is dollar cost averaging. What dollar cost averaging is, essentially each month or on a systematic, periodic, regular basis, you're putting in a certain amount each period and you're catching the waves of the market at really any time. For me personally, I dollar cost average in my Roth IRA. So each month I max my Roth IRA out, or each year I max my Roth IRA out. So every month I'm putting in about $583. I'm catching the market when it's high. I'm catching the market when it's experiencing some volatility. And it's automated, I'm paying myself first. And studies show that over time, dollar cost averaging has been good for investors. The fifth rule is to invest early, take advantage of that compound growth. Think about that chart we showed with the green and the yellow lines and the amount of opportunity you have by letting your invested dollars experience the dividends, the growth, the compounding interest. It's also good for you. And really, the earlier you start, the more potential you have because, again, money cannot buy time. And if time's on your side, take advantage of it. The last rule that I have, that's a golden rule of investing, is to focus on the long term. Don't make decisions on short-term market fluctuations. Keep in mind what your goal for your money is. If your goal is retirement in your future, that probably isn't for a decade away, or maybe it's more. You can definitely afford to ride the waves of the market if you have a 10+ year time horizon. So we need to just zoom out and focus on the big picture and what your long-term goals are, and you're going to be okay. All right, now we're going to talk about retirement planning. And retirement planning involves setting financial goals for you in your life post your working year. So typically we talk about age 59 and a half and above. For most of us, if we're making money and we're employed, we have the option to participate in an employer plan. Or if you're self-employed, you could potentially do a solo 401k where you have an employer plan if you are a business owner. Quick overview of how employer plans work. The first and most important part about an employer plan is understanding the match. If your employer offers a match, take it. This is free money. This is a better return than what the market can do. And also, you're working for this company. This is kind of baked into your wage. So you are leaving dollars on the table if you're not taking advantage of your match. So at least contribute up to where you can get that match. Your future self will thank you. And you want to also see maybe if there's a Roth option available. Consult with a financial advisor if a Roth option's available and you think that could make the most sense for you. For a lot of people I'm working with, a Roth option does make sense. So not all employer plans offer a Roth option. So if they do, it's worth considering taking a look at. Be cautious of target date funds. It won't be the end of the world if you have a target date fund. However, target date funds are made for a general population, kind of based on age range versus personal situation or scenario. So sometimes they tend to hold a little more bonds than I like to see, and making that small tweak and getting a little bit more aggressive could potentially make a really big difference in your long-term picture and that retirement plan. So a target date isn't bad, but it's also wise to maybe talk to an advisor to get their thoughts on what other investment options may be in the best interest of an employee when it comes to what they're invested in their employer plan. Understanding your vesting schedule is super important. If you have a vesting schedule of 5 years, that means that you have to be with the company for 5 years in order for you to get their match. So if you hear that you're working for a company for 5 years and you really don't think you'll be there for 5 years, and maybe this is a more temporary role, it might not be worth it to go for the match, or just know that you might not get the company matched dollars. You also want to keep in mind that withdrawals are restricted until age 59 and a half. So kind of think of a retirement plan as a vault that won't unlock for you until you're age 59 and a half. The government offers some pretty sweet tax benefits for us during our working years if we contribute into a retirement account. So on the back end, we kind of have to be at the government's mercy and be in good faith that we are going to keep these monies here for the retirement years. And lastly, after you are no longer working for a company, it really is so important to understand what your options are when it comes to that employer plan. So here's just a brief overview of how employer plans work, some pros, some cons. Again, if your employer plan offers a match, take it. That's a huge pro. There's pretty limited cons here, but it's important to be aware of knowing that you don't have access to this until your retirement age, understanding what a vesting period is, and also understanding that there are some contribution limits. It's around $20,000, so something to be mindful of and analyze each year because those numbers tend to change each tax year. All right, after you change a job, this is one of the most common questions that comes up. You are no longer working for a company, what you can do with your retirement plan. maybe you don't want it to be forgotten about and you want to take control and take action of making sure that those dollars you worked hard for stay in your pocket and you know what's going on with them. So here are the four options that we have. The first one is cashing it out. You get immediate access to the funds, but it's not pretty on maybe you having to pay income tax on it if you take it out before you're age 59 and a half. You might have to also pay early withdrawal penalties, and this can really cause a dent in your overall plan. If you cash out, it keeps you from growth opportunity for your future. The second option is to roll over to a new employer's plan. This is sometimes an option. You would get your tax deferred growth, you consolidate, and maybe you can add some more to that account. But typically, there's limited investment options, and it might not be possible for that new employer to accept the dollars from the previous plan. You could leave it in the old plan. We tend to see that people often forget that they have this money hanging around. And you have to remind yourself, you're working so hard for your dollars. You're waking up every day, going to work, or you want to be very intentional with your money. It's too important for you to leave behind and not forget. So you could leave it at the old plan. You likely wouldn't be able to contribute anymore, and you also may be subject to fees or rules at that old employer plan, and it might be harder to just track down and manage. The fourth option we see is an option that most people end up doing, which is rolling over to an IRA. You would have control of the money. It would be in your name, an individual retirement account. You have far more investment options that can be more customized to you, your situation, and your goals. You could potentially have availability for a Roth conversion. You can consolidate this into one account. So if you tend to switch around careers, or if that happens in your working years, you can consolidate into one IRA. You continue your tax deferred growth. There's some advantages when it comes to estate planning, even though we hope that we'll all be around for many more years to come. There's more creative ways and more options when it comes to estate planning there. And also, an advisor can work with you and take a little more hands-on approach and guide you through how to save for retirement with an IRA. The IRA advantage is that you get tax deferrals. It's kind of like a fast pass at Disney World, where if you get one, you can skip the line. Where if you are invested in an IRA, you can kind of skip some taxes in a completely legal way that the IRS and the government have set for us. So you get tax benefits like tax deferred growth. You could get tax deductions if you invest in a traditional IRA or 401k. And then in a Roth option, you're not taxed on the way out in the withdrawal phase. For 2024, the most you can put in is $7,000 if you're under 50. If you're above age 50, you can put in $8,000. The end of the year is coming up. If you want to max out your Roth IRA, now would be a wise time to do it. Technically, you have until you file your taxes for the next year, but the sooner you do it, the better. And that way it's just one more task that has been crossed off your list of things to do before the year ends. Another big question that we get is, what is the difference between a traditional and Roth IRA? In a traditional IRA, you get a tax deduction on the dollars you put in. You put in $7,000 this year, you get a $7,000 tax deduction. That's great. The money grows tax deferred. You don't pay taxes on the growth during the years it's in there. But on the way out, you are taxed. Provided that account grows, which we would hope it does, you are going to be taxed at ordinary income rates during retirement. With the proposed sunset rule to taxes, we are likely in the lowest tax brackets we will ever see. So thinking about tax brackets being higher and this account being bigger, that is something to be cautious of when we invest in a traditional IRA. When we turn age 73, the government is going to make you take the money out. They're going to say, hey, we've given you enough tax breaks throughout the years. It's time for you to pay up. Probably won't be for a while for you, but something to be mindful of. No one wants a surprise, and everyone wants to learn what's lies down for the road ahead. And also, it's important to know you can't access those funds till you're age 59 and a half, which we said age 59 and a half is kind of the year where we consider it to be retirement age. These funds really are not for us until we're at retirement. A Roth IRA is a little bit different. What we put in, we don't get a tax deduction on. We get the tax deferred growth, but the biggest benefit is we get tax-free withdrawal, and we don't have those forced distributions. So we're provided the account grows like we hope it would, we won't have to pay taxes on the money when it comes out, considering we are in the lowest tax brackets likely ever. I'm completely fine with paying the taxes on what's going in it this year, knowing that I'm going to escape the taxes on the way out in the future. A Roth IRA, I truly think, is your best friend forever, like for the rest of your life. A Roth IRA can really make a big impact in your financial future. If you don't have a Roth IRA, contact me. We are going to discuss if this is an option for you and make sure that you're getting one started if you are earning $1. The advantage of the Roth IRA essentially is that we like to think of it as farming. Would you rather pay taxes on the seed or the harvest? Paying taxes on the seed when it's small and little is going to be so minute compared to having your crop harvested and paying taxes on that. So in a Roth IRA, we pay taxes on the seed, not the harvest. When it comes to deciding on how we should manage our money, we went over a lot on things you should do with your money. The first thing that you should do is have an emergency fund. A lot of times I get asked, should I pay off my credit card debt or should I focus on building my emergency fund? The answer is going to be focus on that emergency fund. If you have another expense come up, the last thing you want to do is charge it on a credit card where you're going to be subject to more high interest rates, and it's just not a winning game. The only one that wins there is that credit card company. So the first thing you want to do is have an emergency fund. Remember, 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. After we check off item number one, then we can tackle item number two, which is high interest debt. What a relief it would be to not have any high interest debt. There's good debt, there's bad debt. Credit card debt is bad. A car loan debt, some consider it bad, some don't. I personally say it all depends on where your interest rate is. I'll be the first one to share. I have a car. I got a 2.99 interest rate on it. I said, let's take out the debt because I thought that I could earn more than 3% each year for the next 6 years. So having some debt, having student loan debt, it's not all bad debt. It's the high interest rate debt that eats us alive that we want to tackle. Then we want to go for the retirement plan offerings. If you're getting free money, that employer match, take it. Again, it's free money. We didn't really talk too much about it today, but a health savings account would be something to consider. You get a triple tax advantage. You get a tax deduction now, you get tax deferred growth, and you get tax-free withdrawals. If you use this money on qualifying medical expenses, it's a great way to build wealth. I'm happy to talk more about this. An HSA isn't an option for everyone. You have to have a high deductible plan to qualify for one. So it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's something you would want to talk about with a financial advisor to see if it makes sense for you. But an HSA can be so advantageous really because you get that triple tax advantage. Then a Roth IRA would be a wise place to invest our dollars. Something that I see often is that people are really ambitious to plan for the retirement years, and I love that they have that goal, but we don't want to be spending so much in our retirement accounts and investing so much in our retirement accounts that we're not able to save and build that emergency fund. So that's why this order of operations is really important to kind of follow as a guideline. After we've hit all those 5 items, then looking into non-retirement accounts are going to be an option. That's where you have more creative abilities to make your dollars work hard for you. We want to be very aware of taxes. We have these IRA accounts because they are so advantageous on the tax side. When we get to non-retirement accounts, we want to be very careful that we want to try to minimize the tax bill you get every year. If you have a non-retirement account and are investing in stocks and they do well, you get a tax bill for that. And if we can minimize that, we're going to for you. There's even been some years where markets are down, companies still pay out a dividend or capital gain. So your investment account's down and you still get a tax bill. That should not happen. If that has happened to you, give me a call and we're going to talk about how we can maybe pivot and adjust for you to save on that tax bill. All right. I want you to make your money work for you. You worked so hard for it. It is your money. You have so much potential here. If you have money, why not be a savvy money manager and learn how you can make the most of every dollar you have? I'm happy to do an Ask Anything session. No pressure if you want to schedule some